whoa, 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 whoa. Darn it, Wolfie, I thought I told you to fix this thing. Oh, this is fixed. Oh. Well, never mind then. Oh, hello. You join me today, not in the Library of Horror Hotel, where we usually meet to discuss masks, but rather across the hall in the laboratory of Horror Hotel. And it's really pretty close. For one thing, it's pretty close geographically because right across the hall, there's the library. And then on this side of the hall, there's the dead room, and then the purple room, and then this room. It's also pretty close in terms of spelling. If you think about it, all those L's and B's and R's and Y's, you don't even have to mind your P's and Q's, but you do have to look at today's amazing mask that I would like to bring to your attention. Came out in 2025 from the creeps at Trick or Treat Studio, and it's actually a re-release of a vintage, old, classic Don Post Studios mask of yesteryear. And I think it's just awesome that you can see a mask, this particular mask, this sculpture, this design in a Halloween store today is just amazing. Who am I talking about? This youngster. Yeah. Now, he was originally cataloged by Trick or Treat as Thin Green Monster. And some people still call him Thin Green Monster. I'm not sure why they changed it. Possibly because somebody noticed he is in fact blue. I don't know. To me, he looks more blue than green. What do you think? But he's definitely a bluish green. He's kind of a turquoise, aquamarine, tealy. You know what color he is? Olo. O-L-O. Olo. And depending on your eyesight, you may just see my empty hand up there. You may not be able to see him at all, but if you can, you're seeing what is more commonly known, more than Thin Green Monster, more commonly known by the name Thin Frank. Yeah, Thin Frank. And if you're worried that Frank is too thin, never fear. I brought him here to the lab so I can hook him up to some of the machinery here. And if there's one thing I've always heard about Franks, it's that they plump when you cook them. So don't worry. Look at this cool, cool thing. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I need something to standing on. I'm thinking a jar of eyeballs will be good enough for right now. Put them on there? Yeah. Look at the beauty of Thin Frank. Now, for those of you who are wondering, Thin Frank, what, did he forget the rest of it? Was he too tired to say the whole thing? Thin Frank. No, not really. And by the way, are you getting enough oxygen? I hope so. No, I didn't forget the rest of it. I know the rest of it. His last name is, well, he's Frank Enstein. Frank Enstein, yeah. Remember him? He always used to show up late to school and he would have a note signed Enstein's mother. Remember? No, maybe not. Anyway, Thin Frank was originally available in the late 1960s. I believe sculpted around 1966, 67, I believe, and was part of the Don Post 800 line, a line of masks, a series of masks, beloved by millions over the years, because it was really very clever. The 800 line masks, many of which were vinyl rather than latex, as is the Trick or Treat reissue of the Thin Frank here. The 800 line masks were, if you wanted something nicer than the most low-end, low-priced, mass-produced, without much care with the paint, just thin, flimsy rubber. If you wanted something nicer than that, but you didn't want to spend enough to buy the really high-end custom collector stuff, such as the calendar masks, as they're commonly known, that was very expensive back then. That was a ton of money. $35 or $40 per mask back then was like a fortune. So in between, there was the 800 line, which sort of looked like, most of which looked like famous monsters from movies, but some of which were sort of generic monsters. Now this guy obviously was inspired by the Frankenstein monster as seen in the classic movies. Now there's more than one way to skin a bat. There's also more than one way to look at monster mask design and sculpture. One way is that you may want to capture a very specific moment of a movie, a specific scene, a specific still, or at least a specific actor in the makeup. and everything has to be really perfect and really close to that actor's features if they're part of the design. Another way to look at mask sculpting is, especially with mass marketing in mind, is to capture the essence of the character. And a lot of the 800 line masks were like that. They didn't so much look exactly like a particular actor in a particular scene from a particular film. They sort of captured the essence of the character. And back in those days, again, this came out in the late 60s and was available late 60s, early 70s, and everybody loved it. Very popular mask, Thin Frank. But the character who inspired it was played in a series of 8 movies by a total of 4 different actors, most famously Boris Karloff, but also played by Lon Chaney Jr., Bela Lugosi, and Glenn Strange. And if anybody's keeping score, let me just go ahead and tell you, we ended up with a 3-3 tie between Glenn Strange and Boris Karloff, and a 1-1 tie between Lon Chaney and Bela Lugosi, just so you know. In case there's a quiz later. And there might be, right, Frank? Yeah. Now, Frank here is not meant to look exactly like any one of those particular actors. He is sort of a blend that creates the impression of the ultimate view of what Frankenstein's monster should look like in your brain and in your memory. And you see that, if you see shininess in here, that's because there's a shiny, clear plastic liner that just goes in the face, which keeps the face from getting squished in shipping and storage, but which you want to take out of there if you're going to actually wear it, if you like breathing. But anyway, just for display, that hard plastic shell is inside the vinyl mask. Where were we? Oh yes. This was sort of all of the Frankenstein monsters put together into what would most quickly and instantaneously look like a Frankenstein monster to the average human being in the human public. I always thought he looked more like Glenn Strange and Lon Chaney and less like Karloff. In fact, I'm gonna say, listen Frank, I'm gonna say he's 35% Glenn Strange, 25% Lon Chaney, 25% Bela Lugosi, and only 15% Boris Karloff. I ran it through the mask analyzer, that's how it came out. Anyway, these were made of vinyl, once again, and so is the Trick or Treat version. The shiny black vinyl with the stippled on paint over it in this odd blue-green color. Look at that. So you see, that's, if you're thinking, oh, it doesn't look exactly like Boris Karloff. Well, it isn't supposed to. It's supposed to look like the monster as a character rather than a particular, rather than looking like exact replica of Glenn Strange or Boris Karloff or Lon Chaney or Bela Lugosi. No, it's sort of an amalgam in the middle. See? An amalgam in the middle of Frankensteinish effects. Now, back in those days, not everyone knew every little detail because there wasn't anything like interwebs or any of those things hadn't been invented, and it was fairly uncommon to even see monster movies because you had to stay up late at night to watch them. So if you knew what Frankenstein and the Mummy and the Wolfman and the Creature from the Black Lagoon, if you knew what they looked like, either you were a fan and bought the few magazines that were available, or you stayed up late and saw the movies. But you did not have the opportunity back then to play the movie anytime you wanted to freeze frame it and look. You were watching actual live, not live, but in broadcast. You were watching television being broadcast from a television station, and you had to look and keep your eyes open and watch for the scenes with the monsters, and then they would just be in your memory. You didn't have all these stills and books and studies and all the things that we have today. And I'm talking about even before there was like VHS tape. Even with VHS tape, when they put the monster movies out on that back in the 1980s, you could at least watch them. They didn't freeze frame worth a darn, but you could at least watch them when you wanted to and become overly familiar with the makeups. But one way to look at that is just trying to capture the essence of the character and capture everybody's view of what it would look like. Now, one reason I think I like this one a lot. One reason I think you should probably have one, apart from the fact that it's a wonderful collector's item, I think it's also cool to have a Frankenstein mask you could actually wear, because a lot of my friends who are into masks only have masks that they paid a couple of $100 for or something. They're not going to be like, oh, pull this on and they're scare the kids. No, 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 no. If your masks are all so high-end and so meticulously crafted and finished with every little detail done with great precision, you probably don't want to wear one. You're like, no, don't put that on your head. I paid $378 to have that. No. So you can get one of these for 50 or 60 bucks and put it on your head. And one reason you can do that is that it has painted on molded hair rather than real hair. I'm not usually a fan of that, but having grown up with the 800 line masks, I think they get away with it. They look okay, even with that going on. So most of the 800 line monsters were sculpted by a very famous makeup artist in Hollywood named Ellis Berman. But I believe, Frank here, I believe, was sculpted by Pat Newman, the same lady who did the wonderful, legendary, historic Universal Monsters masks for Don Post. And no, I was not there in person in 1966 or 7 when this was sculpted. I was not there to see it, but I believe that's the case. Matters of historic record are not subject to the rules of the scientific principle, like being observable and repeatable. You know that, right? I mean, I wasn't present at the signing of the Declaration of Independence, or when George Washington was inaugurated as the first president, or when President Lincoln was assassinated. But I believe those things happened too. Matter of historic record. I believe this one was sculpted by the legendary Pat Newman. And one reason I think that just looks like a Pat Newman ear to me. That looks like her style of ear sculpting for masks and monsters. But a wonderful thing. I wish they would come out with all of the old masks, but I don't know that molds and castings and such exist on a lot of them. But there was a whole series of great monsters similar to this. And if you're wondering why he's thin, Frank, well, there was another one called the Wide Frankenstein. And the world famous Warren Publishing, home of Captain Company, the mail order business that sold masks and monster toys and monster t-shirts and jigsaw puzzles and stickers and model kits out of the back pages of monster magazines and comics back in the day. Captain Company sold a lot of Don Post masks, and they ended up with some of each, with this other Frankenstein mask and this one. And this one isn't really thin, and the other one wasn't really wide exactly, but he kind of has the look of being a little wider across here, and this one looks a little thinner because he's more sunken in cheeks. He's a little more gaunt right in there. So they had to think of some way to distinguish between them, so they referred to them as Thin Frankenstein and Wide Frankenstein. I don't believe they were ever called that in a Don Post advertisement other than the Captain Company. This was just a Frankenstein mask. But now it's Frank Enstein. Yes. It used to say Universal Pictures on the back, but this version just says 2024 Don Post Studios, and it is just a reissue of the Don Post. What a great face. What a classic. One of the classic, maybe the greatest monster of all time. Everybody's favorite, the Frankenstein monster. And one more thing, I'll tell you, just since there's nobody here but me and you, okay? I wouldn't tell the whole world, but I'll show you. I trust you with this information. Some years ago, a friend gave me a blank casting of one of these. Now I had a vinyl one when I was a kid, but I always thought it was too dark. The one I had was a very dark green, and it did have a drop of blue in it. It was a bluish green, but it was really, really dark, and I knew from watching movies, I thought that he should be paler than that. Anyway, one thing I've always loved to do is take low priced mass-produced masks and see how good they could look with more loving attention given to the finishing. More TLC. You can decide what that stands for, because I don't have a joke prepared for that. but you put some TLC into them. Anyway, don't tell anybody, I'll show you. I always wondered what these would look like with nicer finishes, and a friend gave me years ago, if you don't mind me reaching right off camera here, a latex casting, and this is what it looks like painted by me and with real hair added over top of the sculpted molded hair by Laura Lady. So I have this beautiful one in my collection. I made him paler and bluer than the one that I had a million years ago. I'm turning around here. Now, as you can see, as opposed to this molded hair, this one has actual hair, carefully glued on and carefully placed to look nice and monstery, nice and monster-like. You see that? Yeah. How cool is that? And special thanks again, even though it's been many years, to the friend who gave me this. And by the way, I learned one thing that will not work. You know, it's been said that there's no such thing as failure, because when an experiment fails, you learned one thing that wouldn't work. I learned one thing that wouldn't work. I have this guy on the worst mask stand ever. This did not work. I took this piece of cardboard carpet tube, or cardboard pipe, and I didn't have anything round and flat to put on the end, so I just put some black tape over it, some gaffer's tape on there, and then I put a little bit of plaster in there, and for some reason it hardened like a weeble. So it's all rounded on the bottom. So when you put Frank on there, he appears to be woozy, drunk, you know. Possibly his eyesight's bad, like it was supposed to be in Frankenstein Meets Wolfman. But that's not a good idea. That's not a good way to... Here, let's put the plaster on top. There! See, now it stands nice and all right. That's about all I have to say about the gorgeous Thin Frank, aka Thin Green Monster, from the folks at Trick or Treat, and I recommend it heartily. And that reminds me, it is with a heavy heart that I say goodbye today, and that's mainly because of the jar that it's in. Man, by the time you fill these with the formaldehyde and then get the that big metal cap on there, weighs a ton.